Alright. So, the sun is going down a little bit, so
again.
Bear with me. Yes.
Same time.
Same thing happened last time. As the title suggests, today I will be talking about our relationship again. No, so we're talking about long distance relationships. It's something that lots of people personally have asked me about, like us and how we've dealt with it, and also how some people have asked me on YouTube, like how did you find a long distance relationship? It was like halfway through 2016. I got a contract to work at Universal Studios in Singapore, and Yoshi got a job to work in Dubai. At that point, we parted ways physically, not emotionally, and we were apart for, in total, a little bit, it was maybe like 14 months or something like that. And in that time, we managed to see each other. It was roughly like every 3 or 4 months we would get to meet somewhere. Once I went to Dubai to see Yoshi, and that was great. That was for like 5 days, I think. And then the next time I saw him, we went to the Philippines. I think we actually met in the Philippines airport. And then the next time I saw you was, I think you came to Singapore again. And then after that, I went back to Japan, and then I saw Yoshi then. And this brings us to today, well not today, kind of like a month ago, Yoshi came to Australia just to see me then. Which is a bit sad when you think about it, that, you know, it's an entire year and a half of our relationship. We're actually only physically together for 2 months of it. People always ask me like, how do you, just like, I don't know how you do it, Hannah, how do you manage to not be together for so long? I think like for me, long distance isn't really, it's not like really bad all the time, or it's not like really good at some points. It's just kind of like averagely crap all the time kind of thing. Maybe sometimes if like something big is happening in my life, like emotionally, and I really need to be near Yoshi, but most of the time it's just kind of, the worst part to me is that it feels like our relationship isn't growing or going anywhere, going any further, because we're not actually there to grow together. It's always, I mean, obviously not always worth it, depends who you're dating. If you can see a future with you guys together, then it's worth it. And it was worth it to me. How did you find long distance? Like when you were in like Dubai, Japan, I mean,
that was like after
3 years.
After 3 years we started dating or something. So I didn't feel like too sad because
we've been dating for a while.
And then after we live in other countries, like these days, a lot of things you can like contact with. So
yeah.
I was so busy, and she was also busy.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad, I think. Yeah, I don't know. It worked somehow.
I think it worked well for us. For us specifically, I think it worked quite well because we're both kind of like busy people, always working on something or another, or keeping busy in some way. So this is actually going to be like one of my first tips that I'm going to say a bit later, but that is to make sure that you've both got your own hobbies and things to be doing. So at the time I was working at Universal Studios in Singapore, and Yoshi was in Dubai. So we both had 2 very different things and different lives and different worlds to get used to and things, and there was so much going on in our life at the time that it's not like easy to forget about the other person, but it's easy to forget how much you miss them kind of thing. So actually I have done long distance before. You have to cover your ears. My first ever boyfriend, I was like 17 years old. We were dating for a year, and a lot of that time I was in Sydney and he was in Melbourne. So we had long distance relationship. I was like very young, but anyway, so that was like my first relationship. So for me, I was doing full-time study and I was just busy all the time. I was go. I was exhausted half the time as well. But my boyfriend at the time, he didn't have a job and he wasn't doing much during the day, so it was really hard for him. So all he could do was think about how much he missed me. That is like a huge learning curve, I think, to make sure that you've always got something to be doing, something that you're working on, any kind of hobby or project helps like crazy. That was a huge thing that helped us get through it. And also, I think this is probably kind of surprising for most people. For the last kind of like 6 months, I guess, we never Skyped or like FaceTimed or anything. And that's mainly because I don't really like Skype. It feels like this like burden. If someone's like, oh yeah, I'll Skype you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. It's like, oh, I have to be there tomorrow night at 7 p.m. And it feels kind of like I'm in jail and I have to sit there and I can't do anything else. I just have to talk to them. It feels like a very formal thing. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a casual kind of thing. And then usually when I'm talking to them, I forget about my day. I'm like, oh, it feels too formal and it's kind of weird. I don't know why I feel like that. I just prefer to like talk on Facebook Messenger or like send you photos on Instagram or something like that. So we actually kind of didn't really talk face to face for quite a long time.
I think we are both really similar. We're not kind of those people who are, I need you right now, I need you. Kind of, you know,
yeah, that's true.
I want to be with you all the time, all the time. Kind of thing. I'm also don't really like talking through like a video chat or Skype. If I really need, then you can tell. Maybe
when I'm like,
2 times or 3
like,
times.
I miss your face or something, and then we'll Skype.
When I had like big issue in Dubai, then that was the time, okay, I gotta talk to you. But we're really similar. That helps a lot because we both, you know, trust each other. So I didn't feel like really nervous at all.
Yeah, I never would have like even thought like, oh, Yoshi's cheating on me, or if I see a photo of you and a girl, I'm like, who is this girl? Like, I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Like, he's hanging out with other people. But I can't speak for anyone else. I can only speak for my own relationship. So that was my experience with it. So, as promised, here's a couple of tips on how we, as a couple, got through long distance relationship. This is tip number 1. Yeah, so tip number 1 is the first one that I already said, so make sure that you've got a hobby of some sort. Keep busy because that helps take your mind off how much you miss the other person. It gives you kind of your own sense of independence and like, rah. Anyway, the next thing that I found really, really helpful in a long distance relationship is to make sure that you have an end date in mind. I think that's probably the only way that I could ever do it, is knowing that I'll get to see you in 3 months, or like, oh, I'll find a time I can see you again in 4 months. Even 4 months, it's like, well, it's such a long time, but having that end date in line is like, it's like a finish line. So you can actually keep running towards a goal and you can push through that last little bit. It's getting quite dark. Like, imagine if you're running a race, but you don't even know where you're supposed to finish. You're just gonna feel exhausted and it would feel longer than it actually might be. So having an end date in mind, no matter how far away it is, helps so much. My next tip is communication, obviously, because that's all that you have. That's the only thing that you can do in long distance is talk to each other. I think like any time that we would have like a little fight or like a small argument, it's usually because one of us didn't communicate something properly, and then you like come up with your own like assumption in your mind of like what they meant or what they were talking about because it wasn't communicated properly or something like that. So it's easy to lose sight of the kind of person that they are if you don't talk properly. Yeah. I think my final biggest advice that I will give about long distance relationships is don't listen to anybody else's advice, including ours. So my point is, if you listen to somebody else's advice about, if you ask someone advice about your relationship, like, oh, my partner said this, or he's like this way, what should I do? That person's opinion about your relationship is completely unqualified and uneducated. They have no idea what your relationship is like. The only people that know what your relationship is like is you and your partner. I think if I listened to some of my friends' advice, or if I asked my friends' advice about some things, I possibly would have like broken up with Yoshi, or I would have had a lot more issues or more arguments or something like that, because everybody is different. Someone might give their piece of advice about your relationship, but they would never be able to know all of the conversations that you've had and the context behind it and every bit of experience and knowledge that you have about your own relationship. So their advice doesn't have any weight, and I think it is a bad idea to listen to it. I think that your relationship is your relationship. I think that you should do what is best. Take some people's advice, listen to videos about long distance relationships like this one, thank you, but take it with a grain of salt. Like, I think the best thing that you can do is to stay, what's that called? That's Qantas. I think the best thing that you can do is to stay grounded and level-headed, and to keep in mind the kind of relationship that you have. Yeah, you can listen to little bits of advice and stuff like that, but don't follow it to the T. Those are our four tips on how to survive a long-distance relationship, and how I keep planning to survive, how I plan to keep on surviving long-distance relationship with Yoshi in the future. In about 5 days, Yoshi is going to be going back to Japan. 5 days later, I'm going back to Japan, but I'll be going to Tokyo, Yoshi will be going to Osaka. So I guess the next time we'll see each other, maybe like a month or so later? I don't know.
I don't know either.
You see? We need to have an end date, otherwise I'm not too worried, and I know that I've survived an entire year in a different country to Yoshi, so not worried at all. So I think it'll be fine. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you thought it was interesting in any way, or tell me if you're in a long distance relationship, if you found the advice helpful, or if you've got more advice for other people that might be looking for some, but don't listen to it. Oh yes, make sure, I mean, you don't have to, but subscribe if you want to, that'd be cool. Subscribe to Yoshi's channel. It's in Japanese, but if you're studying Japanese, just go and look it out. City Nest. Yes. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye. Yoo.